Welcome back to Beyond the Tour. This is episode 32, the second for 2025. Luke, how are you?
Morning, Jake. Very early morning recording here. Back into the grind. Holidays are a distant memory, and we're back into business as usual, both from a work life and golf perspective. So, bit to unpack from the stuff that's happened over the weekend.
It certainly is. So let's get straight into the results. This will be a relatively quick episode today. We've got the Sony Open, which was won in a playoff by Nick Taylor. He seems to be a bit of a demon in the playoffs there. And the Team Cup on the DP World Tour, which was an absolute rout by Great Britain and Ireland.
Thrashing, wasn't it? Which is a shame. You would have liked to have seen it a bit closer for an event that posed a lot of potential. Thrashing in the end, nonetheless.
Yep. Then we touched on it last week, but there was the Lees, Minwoo and Minji, who are hosting the PGA Tour of Australia's the Webex series over in Perth, which was, it looked like it was I didn't watch a great deal of it. I watched a little bit of the playoff. It was a mixed event, I believe, wasn't it?
Yeah, mixed event, professionals and amateurs and all abilities as well. So a very inclusive event, shall we say, and another playoff.
Another playoff, yes, which was won by what was his first name? Is it was Dool.
Jordan Dool.
Jordan. Yes, there you go. So that was interesting. Did you watch much of the golf over the weekend?
I didn't catch too much. I saw the sort of highlights at the Sony and a little bit of the play in the Team Cup over on the DP World Tour. Unlike you, I wasn't able to see any of the Webex in Perth, but I've been able to catch up on all the sort of happenings and whatnot. So let's sort of dive into some of the detail there.
Yep, absolutely. So no, I guess first to the Sony Open, probably the biggest takeaway for me was the fact that there was not a lot of separation. So there was a lot of people in and around the leads. And I think in reflection a little bit about the state of the PGA Tour at the moment, the fact that we've got essentially two rungs of the tour. This bottom rung, there are so many brilliant players, very high quality players that sort of make up the tour. But the way it's structured is that for anyone that separates on that tour, they go straight up to the signature series and you don't see them again straight away. Now, how that's different to a DP World Tour or a traditional sort of tour setup is that even if you do get that separation of really high quality talent that may leave the tour, generally it's not until the end of the season. So you get to see them stay and remain, and you might get the periods of dominance and whatnot. Or at least a little bit of additional excitement seeing multiple winners on a particular tour. But this rung of the PGA Tour, the minute someone sort of separates and wins, they disappear. So you end up with what's left on the tour is all these really high quality players that haven't that ability to sort of separate. We see these bunch leaderboards, which I don't think is super interesting to watch.
As you say, it was very bunched there. I think there were 24 players or thereabouts within 4 shots of the lead, sort of, late on Sunday. So it showed that there was a lot of competition in the event. And even the eventual winner, Nick Taylor, he was 5 shots behind at one stage there on Sunday. And, sort of certainly helps going on a 4 straight birdie run and then chipping in for eagle on the last to force the playoff. But you're right, very bunched leaderboard, and then once one of these sort of B grade players, shall we say, and I don't mean that in a derogatory sense, it's just in the 2-tiered system that we're seeing on the PGA Tour. One of the tier 2 players, shall we say, gets a win on the board and they get themselves into tier 1. Well, as you say, they're sort of off to the races, and you don't often see them again. Certainly on a number of the lesser significant PGA Tour stops.
Yeah, apart from that, the finish was good, relatively exciting. JJ Spawn and Jaeger, who was probably in the last group, they both made mistakes sort of coming down the stretch. At one point, it really didn't look like Nick was nowhere near it. Really,
No.
he was what 15, 14 under, coming onto the 17th with the leaders was still 3 holes back, so they were playing 15.
Yeah, I think he was 14 under and the Eagle took him to 16. But you're
Yep.
right, at one stage the leaders were at 15 under and he was at -10. So, I mean, you would have put a line through him really at that stage. But the 4 birdie run helped. And then what did you make of the relief, the backboarding and the relief on 18 for him to catch a good lie and then be able to chip it in?
I don't know. Well, outside of what we've discussed before, like in terms of setting it up like what the Open do and putting it into a really poor spot that you want that relief has to be taken. Like,
Mm,
but it's not going to happen, really, is it? Because it's a player driven or player run tour, so
mhm.
everything's designed. See, I think the biggest example of that to me is the fact that they play the same sand everywhere. And last week, you sort of hear people sort of not loving the sand at Kapalua because it's not the sand they normally play out of, and the ball doesn't automatically like just pop out when you
Yep.
when you strike it. So
Mm.
that's the biggest issue there. Like when you're getting the players essentially dictating the play and the ballpark they're playing on, like it's yeah, it is what it is.
Yeah, it's a simple fix, really. I mean, if the grandstand is in thick rough,
Hmm.
under no circumstances should your drop be able to end up on the shortcut stuff.
Yep.
And that's exactly what happened here. There was thick rough that he should have had to have dropped into. He ended up being able to take a drop and get relief on, the fringe or the first cut. And of course, his ability to control and strike the ball cleanly out of that sort of lie is far better than the fluffy rough. But nonetheless, he still did the hard work in winning it. In the playoff, I think Echevarria was unlucky on one of the playoff holes where he hit a beautiful approach shot for his second. For all money, it looked like it was going to finish sort of 6 feet past the pin, and then just managed to trickle off into the rough. So significant difference there between having a makeable eagle putt and then having to sort of try and chip in for eagle. An interesting finish, definitely. Some other things that stood out to me, Keegan Bradley making a fist of it. Playing for a Ryder Cup spot, do you think? Trying to impress the captain.
It looks that way, doesn't it? Like it really
And
didn't do a lot of impressing.
and what do you think of the Tom Selleck style mow?
It's good. Bring it on. Like
Bring it.
that's where the sporting world is going. Really, the young guys with their little fades and all their little sort of
He
half
he
mullets and stuff
he
going on.
looks like he should be sort of chewing some tobacco and sitting in the dugout of a baseball, as the manager of a baseball team. But
Does he keep it? Do you reckon he keeps it for the Ryder Cup?
oh, I think he's got to now. He's throwing it
Yeah.
out there. It's got to at least have a run for a whole season. I mean, good on Keegan. He's certainly not my favourite golfer, but he's showing a bit of personality. Just need to get him away from the slow play and the old stink eye every time he looks at a shot or a putt. So.
S-
Um,
Speaking of representative teams, I guess in hindsight, like leaving Nick Taylor off that President's Cup team last year in his home country, maybe not the best decision. I know he didn't play a great deal of good golf between wins, but it's hard to have someone win in the same season, being one of sort of 4 or 5 Canadians, and above. I think he's ranked above some of the guys that actually ended up in the team, and to be overlooked.
Yeah, well, I would have picked him over Pendrith, and that's well and truly before Pendrith bombed. It's 2 times in a row he's been horrible in the President's Cup, so he's a never to be picked again candidate, I think. Um, but having 5 PGA Tour wins, that's legit. Like
Mm,
he's a bona fide pro, Nick Taylor, and he should be in every conversation for the internationals team going forward for the President's Cup. Echevarria as well. I
yep.
mean, he's really putting his name up in lights. And so, I was listening to bits of the Shotgun Start podcast, and they were saying that, they were snubs from the international team. I don't know whether that's the case, but I mean, if there's no selection of Taylor going forward, I think it's definitely getting into that category now.
Yep, that certainly is. Let's jump across to the Team Cup on the DP World Tour, which was in Abu Dhabi. So the end score was 17-8. I tuned in again on Sunday early, and it was all pink, the leaderboard. It was
Mm.
a couple of sort of tied games, and everyone else was winning, and that was certainly how the first few days went as well. I guess the only sort of like the standout from the European team was probably Pavon.
I think Bavon was sort of the only thing to write home about from continental Europe's perspective. And when you're going into Sunday singles matches, 11-4 down, you haven't had a good couple of days. So Justin Rose's team really got the job done early, and there's certainly some strong showings from the likes of Tommy Fleetwood and Tyrrell Hatton, No Hat Hatton. There's a bit of talk around McKibben as well. Anyway, an interesting event. I wish I had some time to catch more of it. But how do you think Luke Donnell will be feeling about the Ryder Cup and Europe's chances off the back of what we saw here at the DP World Tour Team Cup?
Well, I guess we're going to be seeing a lot more of GB and I in that Ryder Cup team. If this is sort of any indication,
Mm.
the big Europeans to come in, I guess, would be a Ram. Who else is there? There's a Ludwig. We're probably the only couple really that I thought that you'd bring in from the European side. Pavon, of course, but outside of those
Hovland.
three, like Hovland, yeah, that's as well. But which is getting a third, pushing half the team anyway. But
Yeah, there's some pretty significant names to bring in. So
yeah,
there's probably it would be hard, I think, for Donald to have got a really good read. It would have been better if those other guys were actually playing. But of course, they've got other commitments and whatnot.
yeah.
TGL and all that sort of stuff.
Well, yes, yeah, of course.
Very important.
Yep. What did you make of Tom Kibben? News about Tom?
Yeah, so I guess the rumor, I'm not sure it's been confirmed yet, but the rumor is that he'll be signing with LIV. He's a young, up and coming stud, shall we say? So some good raps on him. Apparently, he's been mentored by Rory McIlroy, and this is sort of part of the conversation that we were having around what happens with LIV this year. Do they make any really big name signings, etc.? And will we see any more big defections from the PGA Tour? I think their focus is very much on trying to get the cream of the crop of the young talent coming through. And so it's not surprising to hear that someone like him's being targeted by LIV, and I suspect we'll have confirmation in the sort of coming days or weeks.
Yeah, I think you're right there. I'm not sure what to make of the mentorship, Rory. I don't know that they're that tight. I know he's a Hollywood golf club sort of graduate, but I don't know. I think that might be, to me, it seems to be a bit more like a media beat up type of thing.
Yeah, and the media love to sort of take some commonalities or some some similarities and really extrapolate them out as far as possible. So yeah, Tom, interesting case in point there for LIV.
Yep. Justin Rose was a pretty decent captain.
Yep. led from the front. And Rosie always has this sort of ability to really step up and play beyond his current form at the time in these teams events. And so, which we often see from the European Ryder Cup players, you just need to see what's been done before by some of their players. So it wasn't surprising for me to see Rose as captain really sort of put in a stellar performance.
The Webex series over in Perth, again, I didn't catch a great deal of it myself outside of that sort of that Sunday finish. Yeah, so Jordan Dool won that in the playoff over Hayden Barron, who plays on the DP World Tour as well. That was his first win, I believe, as a professional.
Yep. And played at Royal Fremantle Golf Club there. What did you think of what you saw of the course?
Yeah, not too bad. I've not played Royal Fremantle actually. I'd love to get over and play a few of those Perth tracks. Yeah, so not too much else really. I didn't catch it great. It really was. I turned on. I think at the time when I turned it on, they were literally starting the playoff, and I had to choose between that and the team cup. I chose that. Then I switched off.
Prioritized. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and look, I mean, I think he finished 17 under par through the 72 holes. Took the victory on the second playoff hole. So, an interesting sort of series, the Webex series. You look at Webex as the sponsor, and you wonder what's the sort of commercial imperative for them to throw money behind this. Is the CEO of Asia Pacific Webex a golf nut, and that's why it's happening, or is there actually some legitimate business value that they get out of it? Not not the type of headline sponsor I would expect for that series.
Yeah. So what do you think the purses in that one was 250,000?
Yep.
Get 4 days of at least KO broadcast. So maybe it has a bit of maybe there's a little bit there you get out of it, but I don't know. Like we get such random sponsors here in Australia,
Don't we?
Yeah, we do. Like the Honda sponsorship is crazy. Like that's
Yep.
That's super weird as well. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know what to make of any sponsors in Australian golf.
Yeah, I mean, I think back to some of the ones that we've seen, and the last time we saw the Australian Masters, I think JB Ware was the headline sponsor, and I could really understand that. That's sort of a private investment broking firm, and a lot of your target customers are going to be golf fanatics. So
Yep.
I can certainly understand that. But some of the other ones that we've seen, they are kind of head scratchers, aren't they?
Yep, they certainly are. All right, events this week. We have the Amex, which is played at the Pete Dye Stadium course at La Quinta. $8.8 million purse. Notables in the field: Nick Dunlap, who was in Hawaii, Xander, JT, Sam Burns, Pat Cantlay, Jason Day, Tony Finau before he switches across to LIV, Ricky Fowler, Sungjae Im, and Cam Young.
Yeah, pretty good field. And I don't mind the American Express, out there. It's at Palm Springs or thereabouts. So I'll definitely be tuning in to have a look at that one. And Pete Dye courses are always a great watch, aren't they?
With the professionals on them, yes.
Yeah.
They certainly are. Yeah. I think
Not
Scotty,
amateurs, is that what you're saying?
Yeah, that's right. That's what I am
Not a
saying.
nightmare for amateurs.
Yes.
Is that
yeah.
speaking from experience? Have you played
It
one?
is. I
What'd you
think I
play?
have. It
Sawgrass.
was a long time ago. I can't even remember what I played. It was somewhere in the States. It was before I was really into golf. It was one of these things with the travel agency you get put on. Educationals, they're called. So you go across and you just do all the normal things. And I think I played one of the course there or somewhere. The other one I played, which is interesting, the same thing. I just had no interest in golf at that point. I played Cape Kidnappers.
That's
Before-
criminal to be
I
able to
know.
play that and not have any interest in golf.
I know, it's crazy. It's crazy. It's to think like what I know now. I mean, God, I would have put a little bit more respect into that round.
You must have shot a million if you weren't into golf at that stage.
Yeah, we were just in carts. Like we played 9 because
Yeah,
you know
okay.
you sort of come in, you do a bit of a tour of the lodge and all that sort of stuff, and continue on. And being sort of Hawke's Bay, there's a lot, so a really big wine region
hmm
in New Zealand. So it wasn't sort of like the priority. So yeah, but awesome to see at least. I can remember what it looks like. So there's that.
Did did you get to Craggy Range over there?
Craig Range, yes, actually, I did that on a different a trip last year. So
hmm
we went and had lunch at Craigie Range, which is great. But there's so many places like that in New Zealand. It's just incredible. Those they do it really well. The lodges in particular, that's almost like little high end hunting fishing lodges. They're just out of this world. They're like on another level. There's not much in Australia that sort of compares.
Yeah, and I think someone who lives in the Mornington, and that's an area that prides itself on its wineries and the sort of country slash coast dichotomy. It's interesting to hear you say that. So it must be pretty spectacular. I haven't been to Hawke's Bay, but definitely keen to get over there. The best I've seen is sort of Queenstown and
Yep.
Jack's Point there,
Mm.
but there's so much more to do, isn't there, in New Zealand?
Yeah. Once, I won't mention who it is, but a couple of years ago, one of the guys I play golf with is a sales rep. Um, and he looked after a lot of different regions. Used to look after New Zealand. So he'd say, "Hey, come play. Well, come on my trip. I've got to go and do my sales rounds in New Zealand." So you get free accommodation. I've got the car. Yeah, okay. And I'm like, well, being a travel agent, I can probably swindle us some green fees at a few courses. So I went over there and we played Titirangi,
hmm
Muriwai, and Gulf Harbour in Auckland. And then we went down to Wellington, played Royal Wellington and Parapara Umu. All free. And all the accommodation was covered for by the employer of the guy who went over there. But we'd do the mornings, early mornings, we'd have to get out and he'd do his round. So I'd sit in the car and like, you can't sort of hang around me because if these guys work out that you're with me, I'm going to get questioned here. And so we'd spend sort of an hour or so doing a few rounds, visiting people, and then we'd just jump in the car and go and play golf.
Yeah, well, that's how to do it, isn't it?
I know he's interesting. He actually listens to this podcast, which is good. But
Good on him.
he always finds a way to. He plays golf. Well, he was playing 3 days a week with us midweek on the clock as well. So,
He's got it made, hasn't he?
yeah. Well, actually, you know what? He once played. I won't tell you where in the world it was. It was with his boss. He played golf with his boss mistakenly, right? So he shouldn't have done this, but he played golf with him. So his boss had his golf link or his Golf Australia handicap
Oh, yeah.
number. And the next week he played, and obviously once you've got the number, you can see what everyone else is playing. So his boss questioned him. He's like, "Oh, what's going on? You
All
playing
these
golf?
rounds.
You played golf this morning?" And so he's made up some bullshit. He said, "Oh no, I played a quick 9 really early, and it was just a combination of an earlier 9 that I already had. So that's what that was." Anyway, he gets off the phone. He goes to the golf club, and he gets his golf link number changed.
I mean, you've got to at that point, don't you?
Yeah. He
Yeah,
used to
absolutely.
before that.
I can't imagine his boss believed him.
Oh, no way. And he's had a few different employers. Prior to that, whenever he sort of won a competition midweek, he'd rush into the club. He'd be like, "Yeah, pumped because he absolutely loves it. Like if he plays well, you know about it."
Yeah.
But every time he wins, he has to run into the admin staff, and he's like, "Do not put my name in the paper." Hilarious, all these things. But for all our sales reps out there, if you want to be go and play golf, I can hook you up with some tips on how best to do that on the clock.
on the grift, how to get it on the grift. But just talking through that, I mean, it does sort of reinforce to me, just the incredible golf that we have here in Australia and also New Zealand, and how underutilized it is in world golf. It's just a crime, isn't it?
It is, particularly in Australia. Like, I think that's what we're seeing. New Zealand is big in the US market, which is why I think we see a lot of these players. Why we're seeing Tara Iti,
Mm.
because it's a big US market coming across to that sort of stuff. It hasn't really hit Australia just yet. A lot of that. I'm not exactly sure why. I don't know why New Zealand is so popular with the US versus Australia is
3 hours
popular.
closer, mate.
3 hours closer. That's possibly it. And obviously,
I think that would have part of it, like
yeah,
you hear the Americans talk about Australia, and almost the number one thing you hear in terms of negative feedback is, I'm not getting on a plane for 20 hours. Well,
yeah.
you know, I guess 17 hours is better than 20.
Yeah, but even like what's coming on board in Australia as well. You've got the 7 mile, 5 mile beach down in Hobart, and also Arm End, which I think I sort of touched on that a little bit, which is also down in Hobart.
Mm.
And then even on there's a golf course being built on Kangaroo Island as well. So we're getting so much destination golf being built in Australia. Like it really is. It's we are so lucky where we live.
We definitely are. We've got great conditions in certain parts of the country for it.
Yep.
And, if we can get world-class designers to do some of these, then, as you say, destination golf's going to be well and alive in Australia.
Yep.
Although it already is, I would say. But
That certainly is. Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, LPGA Tour is it's a Hilton Grand Vacations Tournament of Champions. So that's at Lake Nona down in Orlando. $2 million purse. Nelly Corda, Jin Young Ko, Lydia Ko, Brooke Henderson, Lexi Thompson. 2025. I thought she retired last year.
Yeah, got engaged as well. So yeah, be an interesting event, this one.
Yep.
And then DP World Tour. We've got the Hero Dubai Desert Classic. So that's at Emirates Golf Club in Dubai. Good sized purse there of $9 million for the DP World Tour. And we should see Rory, Fleetwood, Lowry, Bobby Mack and Tyrrell Hatton teeing it up.
And John Rahm, I think, for the first time as well. So that is
Making
certainly
a
the event
comeback.
of the week. Yeah.
Yeah, so good viewing window for Aussies as well. So yeah, that'll be worth watching.
Yep. TGL week 1. What were your thoughts on that?
Look, obviously that stadium is super impressive, isn't it? It's hard not to be impressed by the technology and also the fanfare and the collection of players that they've managed to get together. So it was impressive from that perspective. I was surprised when I was watching it that I still felt like it was slow and the pace of play wasn't where I thought it would be. And so much so that sort of after a couple of holes, I tuned out. Now, I was a little bit distracted with some other things, so I need to give it another legitimate go. Like I was watching the replay on the Wednesday night after it had been live during the day on the Wednesday. So, evening time with family is certainly distracting. So I can't say that I sat down and gave it my undivided attention, but I did try to watch it for longer than I ended up watching it, and I sort of drifted. What was your take?
Yeah, as I said, the tech behind it, the production quality, even though it was the first time, was all really good. There are parts of the consuming it live, so we didn't sort of see any golf shot for the first sort of 15, 20 minutes. Now, I would suggest that, like most other sport, that they need to have a tee-off time. And then if they want to do any pre-game show or anything like that, they can have that. But it needs to be separate. So I don't think you can say it's starting at For us, 1 p.m. Australian, and then not essentially start until 1:15, 1:20. I think that gives your viewers the window to leave before
Yep.
getting into it. So I think you need to have a tip off time, which is a small little thing. Um, yeah, I was surprised that the pace was probably faster than I thought it was going to be. I thought it was going to be a bit like it was going to feel a bit slower. You're not seeing very many golf shots, and which I think is the problem for a prime time product, is that you're just not seeing a lot of action.
Yep.
But in terms of the pace, I think they did quite a good job. The shot clock, for the most part, they did fairly well. I thought where they were taking some liberties were around the green. Like, so there was a few times there, I think Wyndham and that they'd sort of been chatting amongst the team, walking across the green, and the shot clock didn't start until they then went and placed the ball
Yep.
in the surrounds to play their shots. I thought that, to me, I thought the shot clock starts when it's your turn. So that would have put a lot more pressure on the player if the shot clock
Hmm.
had started immediately.
Yep.
So I thought that probably needs a little tweaking. Um, but yeah, obviously they're going to get decent viewership again this week or for the next couple of weeks with Tiger, Rory sort of playing. But I still question the long term viability of it in terms of just the huge production costs, and the fact that you're in prime time, and it's not a mass appeal. It's not a family sort of entertainment. You can't sort of sit down there with the family and sort of keep everybody entertained, because it is still a bit too slow and it's still golf. I was watching in the car taking my son to his friend's house, and he asked me, because I had it on, like, just watching it, I was driving or whatever, but he asked me if that was a video game that they were playing.
Mm.
And when I said no, it's like TGL, it's a new sort of golf contest. He zoned completely out. Went back to watching his YouTube.
Yeah, I mean, it did feel a bit like, Tiger Woods PGA on the PlayStation from back in
Yep.
the day. And will it be a long-term thing, or is it going to sort of boom or bust? I guess it's hard to make a call off the week one performance, but I think, all of the criticisms that have been leveled at LIV, around, well, there's a huge upfront investment cost to this. They're never going to be able to recover the investment and whatnot. I think similar questions got to be asked here now. I don't think they've invested as much money as what LIV has invested up front, but it's kind of it's scalable, right? So there's definitely a lot of work for them to do to be able to build it into a commercially viable enterprise. As we discussed last week, they've given themselves the best possible chance of success. Will I watch it again? Yes, I'll give it another crack and see if it can grab my attention for longer than it did this time round. But interestingly, it didn't take long for the No Laying Up boys to really be drinking from the Kool-Aid. I don't know if you had to listen to their recap pod from week one of the TGL, but they were all in very, very quickly, weren't they?
They were. And everyone has been. It's just like, it's interesting. Like, yes, it's part of the ecosystem. It's rooting for the side of golf that they want to see win. So
Correct.
I can understand their excitement around it. It does make you sort of, I guess the counter is probably our perspective as well. So I'm rooting more for LIV for what it means to me as an Australian, and seeing more golf in time zones that I enjoy, and more golf around the world. So I do see that. I sort of treat LIV, in a favourable light. And while I don't want to root against like the PGA Tour and those players, like, I kind of naturally sort of feel like I do.
Yep.
So yeah, I can understand a lot of these guys getting around it, but it is a little bit hypocritical.
Yeah, I think that's right. I haven't heard what the Shotgun Start boys have had to say about that. I've got to say, I've dropped off listening to that more recently, because it's gone from being Andy and Brendan to Andy, Brendan, and the producer,
PJ.
PJ gets far too much of the limelight for a producer, I would think. He's become
Yeah,
the talent.
it's interesting, isn't it? That just how the dynamics can change and how your sort of interpretation of it can differ as well. So he does get quite a lot actually. I don't
Well,
mind him, but yeah, it's interesting. It just changes things.
it
Just
does
changing
change
the
the
talent.
dynamic.
Yep.
But yep.
The TGL this week, it's so LAGC versus Jupiter. So you've got Justin Rose, Colin Morikawa, and Thagala against Max Homer, who's not in fantastic form, Kevin Kisner, who is the CBS golf analyst
hmm
in 2025, and Tiger Woods, who's played like 5 events in the last 2 years.
That's going to be really interesting,
It's
isn't it?
there's no other way that can go, can it? There's no chance that Jupiter can win that, can it?
You wouldn't think so. Although, Kiz does love sort of a bit of a, grudge match. I think Tiger's biggest challenge is the physical ability to walk the course. I was thinking about this after TGL finished last week, and I thought, has Tiger realised that obviously the writing's on the wall for his normal golf career, and he's just not prepared to sail off quietly into the sunset. So this is what he knows that he's got physical capacity to do. So this is his way of remaining relevant by creating this and just, being the center of attention through TGL rather than the PGA Tour.
I think we're going to see in 26 how he really thinks, because he turns 50, he's got the ability to play on the Champions Tour. His big thing, I think, has always been like you don't play golf in carts. And having that ability on the Champions Tour, if he starts playing that, and he'll dominate. There's no doubt about that.
Yep.
And if he's happy to take carts, I think we'll know for certain if he knows where he's at. But
yeah, I think like what you say, he's said before that he's not interested in that. Has he said that he wouldn't play on the Champions Tour either?
I don't think he has. I don't think he's sort of committed either way. I think he's always thought that he was going to be good enough to play on the PGA Tour, which I believe he would be. Absolutely. It's just the physically, just as you say, he can't walk. So I think what will probably happen is that he will dominate the Champions Tour, and we're going to see a huge investment, prize purses and everything go up on the Champions Tour. It will probably rate better than golf. Yeah, I really think that
would be bizarre.
Yeah, I think because he's he's not even a generation. He's a lifetime talent.
Yeah, that's right.
And he really is. He's, in terms of needle movers, like, I know we sort of say that Bryson's doing this and Scotty's doing that. None of them touch the sides. Nothing.
No.
Yeah.
It's just ingrained into the psychology of the American golf fan, isn't it? That you must love Tiger and he's God. So will be interesting to see what he does there. That's for sure.
Yep. LA Fires, the Pacific Palisades Fires, looked like they got close to Riviera. It looked like that Riviera was not overly affected. The Genesis is due to be held next month. So pretty much exactly a month from today. There is talk. Well, there's talk. There's not really talk either way at this stage, whether it's being held or not. I sort of feel for everybody there. They look just devastating, really.
Oh, it's just total sort of apocalyptic stuff over there, isn't it? And we won't get into the politics of it all, but it just looks like an absolute utter disaster zone. Having a look at some of the maps, and with superimposing the fire zones and on that, Riviera is right on the boundary of where the fire's been, and possibly where they've got it contained. I think last time I saw it was something like 14% contained, after being 0% contained for days and days and days. Like, just extraordinary. but I feel last I've seen was that Riv was sort of right on that containment line. I haven't seen anything saying that it's been impacted yet. But I did see footage on X of, flames not being very far away from the golf course.
Yeah.
And of course, these Santa Ana winds continue to be forecast to in extreme conditions. So fingers crossed that Riv remains safe and we get to see the Genesis there next month.
Ollie Schneiderjans was offered a contract as a reserve player on LIV, along with John Catlin. So there are two reserves, or there'll be a few more there, but there are two of the reserves. Two are there. Signings for LIV, Ben Campbell, and how do you spell it? Do you know how to pronounce Luis?
Massive. Massive. That's my best attempt at pronunciating
Spanish.
He's
signed
off to
on
the Fireballs with Sergio.
Yep. News sort of broke that Brandon Grace was re-signed by the Stingers, and as we said earlier, Tom McKibben's not confirmed yet, but strongly rumored. Of all of those signings, guess commenting from my perspective, Ben Campbell, although he's been probably even above Catlin, he's probably been the second best player in that sort of LIV ecosystem around that sort of that weren't already playing on LIV. So it's kind of okay with him being signed.
Mhm.
In hindsight, I think the mistake they made last year when AK came on was dropping Laurie Cantor, because he's gone on to win, obviously, on the DP World Tour. He looks like he's the pick of all of those guys, and they dropped him because they kept Hudson Swafford. Now, hindsight's a good thing, and Hudson Swafford was contracted, but you probably would have just I think with that hindsight, you would have just dropped Swafford, paid him out, and kept Laurie Cantor.
No, I think that's right. As you say, Cantor's sort of played really well on the DP World Tour since going back there. I think he did all right in the Team Cup event this last weekend as well. So picked the wrong horse there, I think, is fair to say.
Yep. But I think Ben Campbell's surprising in that there is no one at his level or above that they could have signed across all the other tours. So
that's what I took out of it. It's not that Ben's not deserving or that he won't be a good solid member of the LIV League. It's more so that they haven't been able to sign someone better. So that's as we've been talking about, that's the big risk for LIV, is the lack of momentum, the lack of big names that are coming across. So a real challenge for that new CEO coming.
Yep. Brandon Grace, again, I've sort of been against the relegation or the forced relegation, and also realistically, like the cards being handed to the guys from in particular the promotions event, but also like the Asian Tour promotions as well, because I think the quality is so much lower than what you can get from other tours. Having said that, we think, without Bubba being announced, but we think of the guys who are relegated, only 50% of the forced relegated guys were actually relegated. So I think that makes a mockery of relegation. I don't think they can include that next year. It has been rammed home by everybody over the course of the last 12 months, particularly the commentators. Like all these forced sort of that to me is probably the worst aspect of the broadcast. Sort of these this sort of, it adds that sort of that what is it like, that just that these storylines that we start getting forced, and they feel forced.
Yep.
And then for that to just not actually happen in either, I think it's that's a huge swing and a miss by LIV. Yeah, it is. And they've signed a contract with like an invisible contract with the viewer, with the fans, and they've gone and broken that. So like, it was just the worst decision I think they could have made.
Yeah, it's not good form, and it really takes away from the promotions event and its impactfulness. Because what does it mean? Um, and so, I remember seeing the first year of that, and there were people, like, you could feel what it meant, and the stakes that were there on the final day, as they were coming down the stretch, and those final shots and putts were being made. Now, like, even if you win the event, you're still not guaranteed a card. So, kind of, what's the point?
I think the other thing, which I think is sort of highlighting for me, is that these guys are not that serious about the teams, because we're now 3 seasons in. The Stingers they've had periods of dominance, but they haven't really won anything. They haven't won like the league.
Mm,
And they're re-signing guys who are in their 40s and on the downward spiral of their career.
mm.
If you're serious as a team, you're looking to improve your team, and they're not doing that. Or they think they're going to re-sign the same guys and expect a different result. I even say that to the Rippers, to Cam Smith. Yes, they won, but Matt Jones is in his mid-40s.
Mm.
He's not getting better. He's
No.
dropping off.
He and look, Smithy obviously be a loyal guy, and
Yeah,
and they're current champions. So, do you change a winning lineup? So there's some merit in that line of thinking, but you would think that this is Jonesy's last, unless they win again, and that Smithy needs to look at renewal there. Stingers, you'd think they'd be going and chasing someone like Pot Guider to see if they can get him, on their team. From the Rippers' point of view, like, who do you chase from a young up and coming side of things?
there's probably 5 to 10 players that would be the equal of Matt Jones
Mm,
in terms of current form, but would have a larger upside. So I don't know. I don't get that. I think you should always be looking to improve season on season. There's not really, in fact, no, there's not. There is at the highest level of professional sport, there is no room now for loyalty if
no,
you're serious about your team.
yeah, I think that's true, and that probably goes both ways, both player and team. If teams are making cutthroat decisions, or you can't sort of blame players for doing the same.
Yeah.
They all have a very defined window. Some are longer than others, but an injury could ruin your career overnight. So you can't sort of blame them for being bloody minded in terms of money either.
Mm.
But yeah, some strange strategy there in terms of live signings for the
Yeah.
teams.
I think it sort of means so. Even though Liv owns 75% of all the teams, it seems that the budget for signing players has now moved to the team
Mm,
itself, and they're not getting a lot of money from Liv to sign players. So that
you know,
that plays into it. I thought maybe, and given the signings we've seen, I thought maybe there's still room for Liv to sign maybe like a new team, and that's where the big money would be spent. It's looking very, very unlikely. There's no one sort of even talking about that in the wins. But I would say if they don't, it's a big, I don't know. For me, it's a fail for Liv this year, because they're in no way set on their place in golf. So give them a couple more weeks before the first event. But it's not looking super promising from Liv's perspective at this stage.
no, agree with that.
Yeah. Finally, Eugenio Chaccara sort of has come out and given interviews to Tom at Flushing It and a few others. He had a little bit of a pot shot on the way out at Liv. While what he's saying is warranted, I think his opinion of himself is probably a little bit more inflated, and he's going to come down. He's going to come back to reality over the next 12 months, because he was comparing himself to Arberg, the fact that he's won
Mhm.
twice, and the fact that Arberg is getting all these all the love from everybody, and he's ranked 6th in the world. And Eugenio, the reason he's 6th in the world is because he's been performing. not because he's playing on LIV or the PGA Tour. It's because he performs in events and you haven't.
Yeah, he's clearly unhappy that he wasn't sort of re-signed, and referring to his wins on LIV, I think he won in his 5th start. So I mean that's a pretty incredible achievement. But he says he's now focused on his new goal of obtaining a PGA Tour card. He's going after PGA Tour wins and majors. So he's now become a legacy player, shall we say? And as you say, on the way out, he's taken a bit of a pot shot at LIV, saying that he was promised OWGR points by LIV, and their decision to drop the application for OWGR points is certainly a major factor in him deciding not to play the promotions event and not to try and play his way back into the league. So I actually can understand that perspective, and I don't think he'd be the only one that would have that level of dissatisfaction with the withdrawal of the application for OWGR points, and that promises were made and they've not been delivered on. I think a lot of the young South American boys would be feeling that way as well. So some merit in what he has to say there, but as you say, maybe an overestimation of his ability and his prospects. But what elite sporting talent doesn't have immense self-belief?
Well, we're going to see how he performs. I think he's banned from the PGA Tour, which he was never a member of, ends in September. So he'll be able to try and qualify there. So the other thing is, so he made a decision in 2022. Again, with hindsight, he probably wouldn't have gone because of the pathways that we've seen materialize in terms of PGA Tour U. The fact is that the first player to play on the PGA Tour off PGA Tour U was Ludwig Åberg. So when Chaccara made his decision, that program had been announced, but it hadn't been affected yet. You hadn't seen any sort of graduates or anything like that. So if he was to have, or he's saying that he made the wrong decision, but the thing is, if he was to have gone down that route, he would have been competing against Åberg, and he may not have got his spot regardless. But the reality was he went to LIV. He's made, the number has changed depending on who you speak to, but it's around $11 million. It's similar to what Åberg's made in his first couple of years as well. He's 6 months or 5 months younger than Åberg. So if you look at where he is right now, he's made $11 million and he's maybe a year behind Åberg in terms of his career progression now. I think that's a pretty good spot. That gives you a pretty good sort of platform. Yep. He could play for the rest of, for the rest of his career and not make it and still be in a better position than he maybe was if he chose the other route. So
100%. And I think he did admit that, he's financially set up now as a result of his time on LIV. And it's a good place to be in terms of being able to have basically free swings at the tour. So we'll see how he goes.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see. And the reality, I don't think he might get some. He's not going to get many sponsors exemptions from the PGA Tour.
I wouldn't think so.
No, and with current form, he's probably not going to make. He's probably not going to qualify for the PGA Tour or anything like that really easy either. So I think he's going to be faced with a bit of reality in the next 18 months, but we shall see.
Yep, it's got a challenging path.
Yep. All right, Lukey, I think that's it for this week.
Let's pull stumps.
A bit longer. Yeah. A bit longer than I expected, but that's all right. That's what happens when you're talking about golf, isn't it?
That's right.
All right. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll speak to you again next week.